Olivia Hart smoothed down her borrowed navy dress for the 100th time, her fingers trembling slightly as she stepped into the glittering ballroom of the Rothschild Hotel. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls above her head, and everywhere she looked, diamonds sparkled on throats and wrists that probably cost more than her entire year's salary. She didn't belong here among Manhattan's elite, but her small nonprofit, Hope's Haven, desperately needed funding, and this charity auction was her only shot. She clutched her worn leather portfolio against her chest like a shield, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. Around her, women in designer gowns laughed with practiced ease, while men in $1,000 suits discussed mergers and acquisitions over glasses of champagne that probably cost more than her monthly rent. The man who never smiled across the massive ballroom, Damian Sterling, stood alone near the floor-to-ceiling windows, his sharp gray eyes scanning the crowd with the detached interest of a predator surveying prey. At 34, he'd built Sterling Enterprises into a multinational empire, and his reputation was legendary. Ruthless in business, emotionally unavailable in relationships, and completely uninterested in the shallow social games that dominated events like this, he took a sip of his whiskey, the ice clinking softly against the crystal glass. His black tuxedo was custom-tailored to perfection, his dark hair styled with careless precision, and his jaw carried the permanent tension of a man who trusted no one and expected nothing from people except disappointment. Another boring evening, his assistant had joked before he left the office. Damian hadn't disagreed. The catastrophic introduction Olivia was so focused on finding the event coordinator that she didn't see the waiter carrying a tray of champagne flutes until it was too late. Her portfolio slipped from her nervous grip. She bent to catch it, and her elbow connected solidly with the tray. Time seemed to slow as golden liquid arced through the air in a perfect, terrible cascade. It landed directly on Damian Sterling's wrist, soaking his platinum Patek Philippe watch and splashing across his crisp white shirt cuff. Olivia's heart stopped. She looked up, her brown eyes wide with horror, meeting the coldest gray stare she'd ever encountered. "Oh God, I'm so sorry," she gasped, immediately grabbing napkins from a nearby table. She rushed forward, dabbing frantically at his sleeve. "I didn't see. I was distracted. Please let me help. ... Damian stood perfectly still, his expression unreadable as this flustered young woman attacked his arm with paper napkins. Most people cowered when they met his gaze. This one was too panicked to notice she should be afraid. "That watch costs more than most cars," he said, his voice low and edged with something between amusement and annoyance. Olivia froze, the color draining from her face. I don't have that kind of money. I can barely afford my subway pass, but I'll pay you back, I promise. I can set up a payment plan, or ... relax." The single word stopped her rambling. Damian gently caught her wrist, halting her frantic cleaning attempts. His touch was surprisingly warm. "It's waterproof, though your technique needs work." She blinked, confusion replacing panic. Was he making a joke? The unexpected invitation for the first time in months, maybe years, Damian felt genuine curiosity. This woman was different. No calculated flirtation, no fake apologies designed to prolong the interaction. Just honest mortification and a desperate desire to fix her mistake. "What's your name?" he asked, still holding her wrist loosely. Olivia Hart." She pulled her hand back, cheeks flushed. "I run Hope's Haven. It's a non-profit for underprivileged youth education. I'm here to pitch for funding, but I'm clearly terrible at making first impressions." "On the contrary," Damian said, and this time a ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You're the most interesting person I've met all evening." Olivia stared at him, certain she'd misheard. "I just ruined your clothes. My dry cleaner will survive." He studied her face, noting the absence of makeup beyond some mascara, the simple dress that had clearly been chosen for modesty rather than impact, the portfolio covered in non-profit stickers. Everything about her screamed authenticity in a world built on facades. "Have dinner with me tomorrow night." "What?" Olivia's voice came out higher than intended. "Why? Because I want to know more about someone who apologizes to a watch. His gray eyes held hers, intense and unreadable. And because I haven't been surprised in a very long time, you surprised me. The dangerous agreement. Olivia knew she should say no. Every instinct screamed that Damian Sterling was dangerous, that men like him collected and discarded women like trading cards, that she would end up as just another story of a naive girl who thought she was special. But there was something in his eyes, something beyond the cold calculation, a flicker of genuine interest, maybe even loneliness, that called to her own isolated heart. One dinner, she heard herself say, "But I'm not dessert." This time Damian actually smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "I wouldn't dream of it." He pulled a business card from his pocket, his fingers brushing hers as he placed it in her palm. "My driver will collect you at 7. Wear whatever makes you comfortable. I've seen enough designer gowns to last a lifetime." As he walked away, Olivia stood frozen in the middle of the ballroom, her heart hammering against her ribs. She looked down at the card, heavy cream paper with simple black text, Damian Sterling, CEO, Sterling Enterprises. What had she just agreed to? The sleepless night that night, Olivia lay awake in her tiny studio apartment, staring at the ceiling while sirens wailed in the distance. She picked up her phone a dozen times to cancel, then set it down again. Part of her was terrified. But another part, a part she hadn't listened to in years, whispered that maybe, just maybe, this cold, controlled billionaire with his ghost of a smile was exactly as lost as she was, and maybe they could find something together that neither had been looking for. As dawn broke over the city skyline, Olivia made her decision. She would go to dinner. She would be herself, completely and honestly. And if Damian Sterling couldn't handle that, then at least she would walk away knowing she'd been brave enough to try. What she didn't know was that across town, in a penthouse overlooking Central Park, Damian Sterling was also awake, wondering what the hell he was doing chasing after a woman who'd spilled champagne on his watch. For the first time in a decade, he was looking forward to something that had nothing to do with business. The restaurant was unlike anything Olivia expected. No pretentious Manhattan hotspot with celebrity sightings and paparazzi hovering outside. Instead, Damian's driver brought her to a small Italian place in Brooklyn. Family-owned, with checkered tablecloths and the smell of garlic and homemade pasta filling the air, Damian was already there. Sitting at a corner table, he'd traded his intimidating business suit for dark jeans and a simple gray sweater that made his eyes look like storm clouds. He stood when she approached, and Olivia noticed he seemed almost nervous. "You look beautiful," he said simply. Olivia glanced down at her simple green dress and cardigan, feeling self-conscious. "I look like a kindergarten teacher." "You're a kindergarten teacher?" Among other things, he pulled out her chair. "I looked up your nonprofit. You've helped over 500 kids get scholarships in 3 years. That's more impressive than anything I've built." She sat down, surprised. "You researched me?" "Due diligence." But his eyes were warm. Also curiosity. "I wanted to know who the woman was who apologized to jewelry." The walls come down over plates of carbonara and shared tiramisu. They talked. Really talked, in a way Olivia hadn't experienced with anyone in years. Damian asked about her work, her childhood, her dreams, and actually listened to the answers instead of waiting for his turn to speak. "I grew up in foster care," Olivia admitted, surprising herself with the honesty. She never shared this on first dates. "Bounced around between 6 families before I aged out at 18. That's why Hope's Haven matters so much. Every kid deserves someone who believes in them." Damian's expression softened, something painful flickering behind his eyes. "My parents died when I was 12. Car accident. I inherited everything, but I would have traded it all for 5 more minutes with them." He paused, his jaw tightening. "After that, I learned not to need anyone. Safer that way." "That sounds lonely," Olivia said quietly. "It is." His hand moved across the table, his fingers barely touching hers. "Until tonight." The yacht and the stars 3 days later, Damian called with an unusual invitation. "I have a yacht. I never use it because sailing alone is depressing. Come with me this weekend. No expectations, just water and sky and conversation. Olivia should have said no. Everything was moving too fast. Her heart was getting involved, and she knew men like Damian Sterling didn't do relationships. They did acquisitions, but she said yes anyway. The yacht was smaller than she expected. Elegant, but not ostentatious, with tick decks and white sails that caught the wind as they left the marina. Damian handled the rigging with practiced ease, his movements confident and surprisingly graceful. "You actually know how to sail," Olivia said, impressed. "My father taught me before he died. It's the one thing I do that isn't about money or power." He adjusted a rope, his muscles flexing beneath his t-shirt. "Out here, the ocean doesn't care about my bank account." It's humbling. They spent the afternoon drifting along the coast, talking about books and music and stupid things that made them laugh. Damian told her about the time he accidentally crashed a board meeting via video call while shirtless and half asleep. Olivia confessed she once accidentally sent a fundraising email meant for major donors to her entire contact list, including her dentist and her ex-boyfriend. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Damian dropped anchor in a quiet cove. They sat on the deck, their shoulders touching, watching the light fade. "I haven't done this with anyone," Damian said quietly. "Brought someone here, I mean. This is my escape from the world." Olivia turned to look at him, seeing past the confident billionaire to the lonely boy who'd lost everything. "Why me?" "Because you're real." His gray eyes met hers, vulnerable in a way that made her breath catch. "Everyone in my life wants something. Money, connections, status. You looked at me like I was just a man whose watch got wet." "You were just a man," Olivia whispered. "Not when I'm with you." He reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "With you, I'm whoever I was supposed to be before life taught me to be cold." They almost kissed the space between them, charged with electricity. Olivia's heart pounded so hard she was certain he could hear it. Damian leaned closer, his hand sliding to cup her jaw, his thumb tracing her lower lip with devastating tenderness. "Tell me to stop," he breathed, his mouth inches from hers. But Olivia couldn't speak. She didn't want him to stop. She wanted to fall into this moment and never come back up for air. Just before their lips met, Damian's phone rang, shattering the moment like glass. He closed his eyes, his jaw clenching with frustration, but pulled back to check the screen. "It's my head of security. Emergency," he answered, his voice immediately shifting to business mode. "What happened?" Olivia watched his expression change from soft to stone in seconds. "Whatever the news was, it wasn't good. I understand. Handle it. I'll be back in 2 hours." He hung up, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I'm sorry. There's a situation at one of my hotels in Singapore. Fire. Everyone's safe, but I need to manage the response." "Of course." Olivia tried to hide her disappointment. "Work comes first." "No." Damian caught her hand, his grip almost desperate. "You come first. But 500 employees are counting on me to fix this." "I promise you, Olivia, this weekend isn't over. Tomorrow, I'm taking you somewhere that matters." "Yes." The art gallery revelation true to his word. Damian appeared at her apartment the next morning with coffee and croissants, looking exhausted but determined. "The fire's contained, no injuries, and my team is handling everything. Today is ours." He took her to a small private gallery in Chelsea, closed to the public. Inside, the walls were covered with paintings, each one more emotionally raw than the last. Landscapes that seemed to bleed pain, portraits where eyes followed you with desperate hope, abstract pieces that looked like frozen screams. "I don't understand," Olivia said, studying a particularly haunting piece of a lone figure standing in the rain. "My mother painted these." Damian's voice was rough. "She was an artist before she married my father. After I inherited everything, I bought back every piece she ever sold. This gallery is private. Just for her work. Just for me to remember that money can't buy back the people you love." Olivia turned to him, seeing tears he was fighting to hold back. "Damian, ... I don't let people in," he continued, his walls crumbling with every word, "because everyone I've ever loved left. Died, walked away, chose something else over me. It's easier to be alone than to risk that pain again. But you, Olivia Hart, you're making me want to be brave enough to try. She closed the distance between them, wrapping her arms around him in a tight embrace. Damien stiffened for a moment, then collapsed into her, his face buried in her shoulder, his whole body shaking with emotion he'd locked away for years. "You don't have to be alone anymore," Olivia whispered. "I'm right here." The promise of Morwen, they finally pulled apart. Damien's eyes were red, but clearer than she'd ever seen them. "I'm not good at this. Relationships, feelings, any of it. I'll probably mess up constantly. Good thing I'm patient," Olivia said with a small smile. "And I'm not exactly an expert either. But maybe we can figure it out together." He kissed her forehead, soft and reverent. "I'd like that. More than I've wanted anything in a long time." As they walked through the gallery hand in hand, Olivia realized something terrifying and wonderful. She was falling in love with Damien Sterling. Not the billionaire, not the ruthless CEO, but the broken, brave man who was learning how to open his heart again. And this time, she wasn't going to run from her feelings, even if it meant risking everything. 2 weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments. Coffee in the morning before Damien's endless meetings, late-night phone calls when he traveled, surprise lunches where he'd show up at Hope's Haven with sandwiches and that rare smile that made her knees weak. Olivia felt herself falling deeper every day, but a small voice in her head kept whispering warnings. Men like Damien Sterling didn't do forever. They did convenient. The doubt crystallized into fear when Julian Cross entered the picture. Julian was everything Damien pretended not to be. Charming, publicly generous, always smiling for the cameras. He ran Cross Industries, Sterling Enterprises' biggest competitor. And according to business magazines, the two men hated each other with the passion of Greek gods at Ward. Olivia met Julian at a fundraising event for Hope's Haven. He approached with champagne and compliments, his blue eyes twinkling with practiced warmth. "You must be Olivia Hart," Damien's mysterious new obsession. Julian's smile was perfect, but something about it felt wrong. "I'm Julian Cross. I've heard fascinating things about you." Olivia kept her voice neutral, immediately on guard. "Oh, yes. Damien's never brought a woman around his inner circle before. You must be very special." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a confidential whisper. "Or very useful. Excuse me." Julian's expression shifted to concern. "I'm sorry, that came out wrong. I just worry when I see good people get caught in Damien's games. He's brilliant at business, but his personal life is a graveyard of broken hearts. He gets bored easily." The seed of doubt, the words burrowed into Olivia's mind like poison. That night, when Damien called, she found herself analyzing his every word, looking for signs that Julian was right. "You're quiet tonight," Damien noted. "Something wrong?" "I met Julian Cross today." The silence on the other end was deafening. When Damien finally spoke, his voice was tight. "What did he say to you?" "That I should be careful. That you get bored easily." Olivia hated the vulnerability in her voice. "Is that true? Am I just another acquisition that'll lose its novelty?" "Olivia, no." Damien sounded genuinely hurt. "Julian is a manipulative bastard who's been trying to destroy me for years. Whatever he told you is designed to drive a wedge between us." "Then tell me the truth," Olivia demanded, her fear turning to anger. "What happened between you two? Why does he hate you so much?" Another long pause. "It's complicated. That's not an answer, because the full answer will make you look at me differently." Damien's control cracked, his voice raw. "And I can't lose you. Not now. Not when you're the first person in a decade who makes me feel human." Olivia's heart twisted. "You're scaring me. I'm scaring myself." He took a shaky breath. "Come to my penthouse tomorrow night. I'll tell you everything. And then you can decide if I'm worth the risk." The confession, the storm hit Manhattan that evening like divine commentary. Rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Damien's penthouse as Olivia stepped inside, soaked despite the umbrella. Lightning flickered across the sky, illuminating his face in harsh white flashes. He looked terrible. Exhausted, disheveled, still wearing his work clothes, but with his tie loosened and his shirt untucked. A glass of whiskey sat abandoned on the coffee table. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. "I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't." Olivia set down her dripping umbrella. "But I need to know the truth. All of it." Damien nodded, his jaw tight. "Julian and I were best friends in college. Brothers, practically. We started our first business together, dreamed about building an empire side by side." He moved to the window, staring out at the storm. "Then I fell in love with his sister, Rebecca." Olivia's stomach dropped, but she stayed silent. Rebecca was brilliant and kind, and saw the best in everyone, including me. We were engaged. I thought I'd found my forever. His voice went hollow. Then Julian made me choose. Him or her. Business partnership or the woman I loved. He said mixing family and business would destroy everything we built. "That's cruel," Olivia whispered. "I chose Rebecca." Damien turned to face her, and the pain in his eyes made her want to weep. Julian retaliated by using inside information to sabotage our company. We lost everything. Rebecca's family blamed me for the rift between the brothers. The stress, the constant fighting, the financial collapse, it destroyed us. What happened to her? She left. Said she couldn't be with someone who brought so much chaos into her life. Last I heard, she married a doctor in Boston and won't take my calls. He laughed bitterly. Julian rebuilt his career by positioning himself as the wronged partner. I rebuilt mine by becoming the ruthless bastard everyone thinks I am. We've been at war ever since. It's the moment of truth. Livia processed this, her mind reeling. So when Julian warned me about you getting bored, he's doing what he always does. Finding my weakness and attacking it. Damien moved closer, his gray eyes intense. You're not a game to me, Olivia. You're the first thing I've cared about more than revenge in 8 years. And that terrifies Julian because he knows if I have something real to protect, I'll be even more dangerous to him. This is insane, Olivia said. But she didn't pull away when Damien reached for her hands. My life is complicated and messy and full of enemies who'd love to hurt you to get to me. You deserve better. Someone simple and safe and uncomplicated. His voice cracked. But I'm standing here begging you not to walk away. Because I love you, Olivia Hart. I'm completely terrifyingly in love with you. The words hung in the air between them, impossible and perfect and absolutely true. You love me? Olivia's voice was barely audible over the thunder. With everything I have, Damien pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers. I know it's too soon. I know I'm damaged goods with too much baggage. But I can't keep pretending this is casual. You've broken through every wall I built, and I don't want them back. The leap of faith Olivia's heart hammered against her ribs. Every logical part of her brain screamed to run, to protect herself, to not trust a man whose life was a battlefield. But her heart, that stubborn, brave part of her that had survived foster care and loneliness and 1,000 small rejections, spoke louder. I love you too, she whispered, and watched his eyes widen with shocked hope. You're right, this is too soon and too complicated and probably a terrible idea. But I'm tired of being safe. I'm tired of protecting myself from feeling anything real. So yes, Damien Sterling, I'm all in. Even if it means facing down your enemies and dealing with your trauma and navigating this impossible world of yours. He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of promise. Outside, the storm raged, but inside his penthouse, two broken people found something they'd both given up on, the courage to love again. The grand gesture 1 month later, Olivia stood nervously backstage at Hope's Haven's annual gala. About to give the biggest speech of her life, the nonprofit had grown exponentially, thanks in part to a massive, anonymous donation that had arrived mysteriously in their account. She didn't find out the truth until she walked on stage and saw Damien Sterling sitting in the front row, wearing that ghost of a smile she'd come to love after her speech. He took the stage himself, shocking everyone in attendance. Hi, my name is Damien Sterling, and I'm here to announce the Sterling Hart Foundation for Youth Education, a partnership between Sterling Enterprises and Hope's Haven funded with $50 million, designed to give every child the opportunities that money usually gates behind privilege. He looked directly at Olivia, his eyes warm. Because someone taught me that the best investment isn't in companies or real estate. It's in people. In choosing courage over fear, Olivia stood frozen as the crowd erupted in applause. Damien stepped down from the stage and walked to her, taking her hands in his. "You asked me once if you'd be just another chapter in my life," he said softly, loud enough only for her to hear. "But Olivia, you're not a chapter. You're the whole story. The only story that matters." Dropped to one knee. The room went silent. "I don't have a ring yet because I wanted to do this right and pick it out together. But I couldn't wait another day to ask." His voice was steady, certain, completely unafraid. "Olivia Hart, will you marry me? Will you take a chance on a reformed ice queen who loves you more than he ever thought possible to love anything?" Tears streamed down Olivia's face as she pulled him to his feet. Yes. 1,000 times yes. Their kiss was witnessed by 200 people, but in that moment they only saw each other. Two people who'd been brave enough to gamble their hearts and won everything. Epilogue. 1 year later, the small Italian restaurant in Brooklyn was hosting a private party. Damien and Olivia's wedding reception, intimate and perfect, filled with the people who mattered most. No press, no business associates, it's just friends and the Hope's Haven kids who'd become family. As they danced to their first song as husband and wife, Olivia laughed against his chest. "We made it. We did." Damien held her closer, his heart full. "Thank you for being brave enough to love me. Thank you for being brave enough to let me." Outside the window, snow began to fall, soft and gentle, covering the city in white. Inside, surrounded by love and laughter, two people who'd been lost had finally found home in each other forever.